Good afternoon, President Wilson. Thank you again for wanting to sit down with the spokesman. I'm joined today with my managing editor, Kimura. So thank you for sitting down with us.
Well, first of all, good afternoon to the two of you. And it is always a pleasure to sit down and speak with our student journalists. And I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah. So this time around, we went a little bit different. We asked students questions to ask you directly. Instead of us just generating these questions, we make sure they were coming from the student body. These are things that are concerned to them and they want to be answered. A couple of them are surrounding some current issues, and then others are just like questions about you.
Yes, sure.
And they just wanted to know. So to start off, the first one is, what will the future of Morgan State look like for the next 5 or 10 years? What are you vision for Morgan?
Yeah, that's a great question. If I were a student here, I would be asking the same question because this is the institution where I will receive my diploma. I will receive my degree. And what you want to make sure that will happen when you get a degree from an institution and you put it on your wall, you want to make sure that every single day, every single week, every single year that passes after you have received that degree will increase in value. That will make your degree pay off more for you. And so this question is rooted in, so what will Morgan look like, be like? How will it be more valuable even in 2030 than it is now? And let me just say right now, this institution is extraordinarily valuable. And so it's a rare bird that can't stand a little improvement. One can never rest on their laurels. And so therefore in 2030, we mean it when we say we will be leading the future. There will be inventions coming out of Morgan. There will be speaking to some of the greatest challenges facing the world. There will be students that will be graduating from Morgan who will be winners in all kinds of contests. They will be, top fellows in their field. We really hope that by then we'll have a Rhodes Scholar coming out of Morgan. We absolutely want Morgan to continue to ascend, to be in the top 100 universities in the United States of America. We are on the verge of getting to the penthouse of research institutions in this country. Students should care about that because undergraduates in particular are going to be a part of a research enterprise. Undergraduates will be in a position where they can ask their own research questions. They can work with professors here. We have set up even some funds to enable some students then to go forward and conduct their own research. That's innovative. Yeah. And so Morgan would be one of the most innovative institutions in the country in 5 to 7 years.
I think it's interesting that you said that because one of the next questions that they have was, how soon will the medical school be ready, and are there plans for a law school for Morgan as we pursue our own status?
I want to thank the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation for investing $1,750,000 in us to enable us to take a step back and to plan a public medical school. And we'll take about 18 months to 2 years to do that. The path that we were traveling down initially was one where the school was going to be affiliated with Morgan, and it was going to be a for-profit entity. That meant that the tuition in that model would have started at about $60,000 a year. But a public medical school, and if we continue down this path, and our goal would be to possibly open a public medical school here in 2031, we think we can do it at half that tuition, at $30,000 or so a year. That's the kind of model that we're building. And so that means that students who wanted to go to med school, this would be perhaps the most affordable medical school in the country. It will be the first medical school that is at a public HBCU. The 4 that currently exist are all a part of private institutions. The Morehouse School of Medicine, Meharry Medical School, Drew Medical School and Howard University Medical School. Those are all private institutions.
And how soon will the medical school be available to students? And is it possible for us to get a law school?
Well, first things first. We looked at the medical school because of the huge demand for additional doctors. And when you look at the number of black doctors that are coming out of medical school, it is nothing short of alarming. That number overall has not increased exponentially, has not increased proportionally in about 35 to 40 years. And that's a sad commentary. And so we are hoping that the Morgan Medical School will speak to this growing need for additional physicians. Just here in Maryland alone, we basically could use 1,300 new physicians every single year, in addition to the ones that are currently being graduated from the two existing medical schools. And so we let the need then drive what program Morgan may be interested in embracing. And we really have not done any kind of study yet on the need for an additional law school that we would start.
Yeah, and just to, you mentioned a lot about what Morgan is doing and what's going to happen in the future. I think one of the questions that students had was, what initially drew you to Morgan, and is that thing still motivating you? Is that what's motivating you to build these infrastructure and just to develop Morgan?
So what originally drew me to Morgan? I thought I was very, very happy as a chancellor within the University of Wisconsin system. We were living in Madison. I had 13 campuses out there reporting to me. I also had Wisconsin Public Television reporting to me, Wisconsin Public Radio reporting to me. I had all of the online degree programs within the University of Wisconsin system reporting to me. In essence, I ran one half of the University of Wisconsin system. And so I was as happy as a lark. So I thought, except the chair of the search committee here at Morgan for president called me one day and said, Dr. Wilson, you don't know us, and I have not met you, but we are conducting the search for president. And my predecessor, the late Dr. Richardson, had been here 25 years. And so the board was conducting their search, and apparently they were not pleased with the 3 finalists. And someone said, there's this guy in Wisconsin, if you can convince him, we think he'll be a good fit. And so when Dr. Shirley Malcolm called me and I had that conversation with her, she's still on our board, I said no, but she wouldn't take no for an answer. And so she just said, look, why don't you just come out and take a look at Morgan? I'd never been here. My ex-wife is a Morgan alum. She came here, she majored in chemistry, biology. Our son, we never visited, and we never brought our son here. And so I had never been to the campus, never. And so I flew out here and I came up to the campus on a Saturday morning, and I had on a baseball hat and I turned it back. I had on sunglasses and I just walked the campus indiscriminately, stopping students. They had no idea who I was. And I was asking them questions like, what is your experience like here at Morgan? Why did you come to Morgan? Would you do it again? And I was blown away. I was so impressed with them. And so I was the first person in my family to go to college. And I had not worked full-time for any significant period of time at an HBCU since I left Tuskegee. And I'd never been in an environment where it was overwhelmingly black. And as I looked into the faces of these students, much like you, the campus spoke to me. And my late father, who had saved all of $5 to send me off to school, he spoke to me in my ear and he said, "Son, this is where you need to be." And I could not get his voice out of my head. And I went back and I thought about it and I said yes to the board. And I was very excited. I saw a campus that really was ripe for elevating itself. You know, that with the appropriate investments, some real significant things could happen here at Morgan. It was the best decision I ever made. I still feel like I felt when I arrived on this campus full-time as president, July 1, 2010. Concluded my 16th year, but rest assured, it has not been 1 year 16 times. Every one of those years has been different than the year before. That's that is really what keeps me energized. And I walk the campus, I have conversations with students. I know what's on the minds of my students. And so I always try and stay in alignment with where I think the students are. Always understanding that as president, I have to understand where they are. But I have to make sure that they don't stay where they are, that they elevate themselves to a point where when they get ready to leave here, they really understand what it means to perform on the world stage with anyone, any place, anytime.
Well, thank you for sharing that. The students want to know, as you look ahead, how long do you see yourself continuing in this role?
Well, I don't stay in a seat just to occupy it. It has to be with goals in mind, and it has to be energizing, and it's never, ever a job. And so if this ever begins to present itself to me as a job, I'm out of here. I don't do jobs. I do callings. And this is a calling. And so long as I feel that the calling is still within me, and so long as the board of regents is of the opinion that under my leadership, the institution is continuing to elevate itself, I can do this for a few more days.
So students say it's difficult to reach offices and get help. How are you improving customer service and communication across campus?
You know, during COVID, after we had been away from campus for 6 to 8 months, I began to feel some things. I began to feel that the entire campus was closed, just as many other campuses, and that we were losing some things that had taken us about 8 years or so to build here. Because we really had built within Morgan during the 8-year period a real sense of responsiveness, of being nimble and agile, and basically having people to be away from campus for a long time. I think some of that returned, not significantly, but it returned. And in anticipation that we had kind of lost a little bit, I put in place a committee at the time called the Resocialization, Reacculturation Committee. And it was with an intent to make sure that we went back and we picked up that which we had gained, and then we redeployed that. And so I think what you're seeing now is the campus is on the verge right now of returning to a point where responsiveness was like, oh wow, you're sending an email to someone, and within 2 minutes, you're looking for a response, or you're sending a text. So we've come a long way after COVID, and we still have a little ways to go, but I'm very, very pleased with the kind of progress that we are making. We want to make sure that if students come into an office or students send an email, that they're going to get a response in short order.
Okay. And some students feel discouraged from protesting or speaking out. Do you believe student activism is supported at Morgan? Why or why not?
So in order to better respond to this question, I hope students and others will understand exactly what protest and activism, what they really are, right? Morgan came into existence in 1867. However, the roots were planted well before then, in 1857, when one of the founders, Reverend Samuel Green, who was an enslaved man, left the plantation, and it was against the law for enslaved people to read and write or to have any kind of pamphlet on their possession which said that they could read or write. So they called him the slave bounty hunters, and he had in his possession Uncle Tom's Cabin by Harriet Beecher Stowe. And they arrested him and sent him to a Baltimore City penitentiary, where he was sentenced to 10 years. And his only crime was that he had a book. And so he served for 5 years. Maryland changed governors. The governor came in and commuted the last 5 years of his sentence. And so it was that fight. It was that fight for inclusion. It was that fight to enable the U.S. Constitution to live up to its ideals that all people are created equal, that gave rise to Morgan. And so the student voice has been critical at Morgan in the civil rights movement, in pushing for change, in integrating the Northwood Shopping Center, and the students gathering here at Morgan, joining hands with the students from Johns Hopkins and Goucher, and marching to Washington, D.C. So the student activism at Morgan has really had a major role in shifting some of the social policies in this country. Second, in the 90s, when, you had, just in buildings that were infested with rodents, and it was just awful here, I understand. I go back and look at some of the films, and it was not the fault of the president. It was not the fault of the administration. It was the fault of the state of Maryland not investing in Morgan that led those students to protest. They weren't protesting because they didn't like the president or they didn't like the administration. They were protesting because they saw the same thing that Reverend Green saw, which was lack of equality. And that equality was there, in this case, because the state was not investing in Morgan. And that's how Morgan ended up with Rollins and Blount at the time, right? Oh, they built a school of engineering here, but guess what? No classrooms. I mean, that was the kind of stuff that students were raising their voices in support of. And we encourage our students to look, you got to understand these headwinds. And these headwinds are not coming from Truth Hall. They're coming from places that are far, far away from this campus. And you as students, you are here to lead the world. And if that's not the kind of world you want to lead out there, pay attention to it and get out there and raise your voice. Raise it in the right places so you can bring about the right kind of sustained change. And when you do that, you are holding high the tradition at Morgan to bring about social change.
Just to shift the questions a little bit, I know over recent years there's been a lot of questions about housing at Morgan. Students always complain about housing. It's one of the things that is just always getting the social media traction, and it's just something that always comes up. Mm-hmm. This time around, it's a little bit different. Students are saying that they know that Enola and Morgan View is not necessarily owned by Morgan leased it. But when it comes to Thurgood and Legacy, those are also not owned by Morgan, but they're on Morgan campus. So I guess the question that's being asked is, why does Morgan rely on leased housing instead of owning these properties, and how do you ensure accountability and quality in housing that isn't directly owned by the university but serves Morgan community?
Yes. So You have three types of housing that typically exist on almost any university campus. You'll have housing that, quote unquote, is 100% owned and operated by the university itself. And so in this case, it would be Harper Tubman and Cummings and Baldwin and Blount and those others that you mentioned. Then you'll have a second model, and that model is what we call a P3 model. This is a public-private partnership. And universities, at least over the last 30, 35 years, have been engaging in public-private partnerships because state governments, so many of them, and Maryland is one of them, they don't provide any appropriation to institutions to build student housing. So the only way that a university can build student housing in that model is that they would have to pass all of those costs on to the students, and you would not be able to afford it. Your housing costs here would be, who knows, $20,000 a year just for housing, right? And so with that in mind, the P3 model, identifying a developer who then the university owns the land, and you basically then, in a very competitive process, you engage in a relationship with that developer, and then you may lease that land to them for a period of time. And that period of time is maybe like 25 to 30 years. They will then come in, build the facility for you, right? They then capture a portion of that revenue for 20, 25 years to enable them to pay off the facility. But at the end of the 25 to 30 year period, that facility then comes to the institution with no debt, right? And so that's what you're talking about in terms of legacy and Thurgood Marshall, right? So it's not like the university doesn't own it. The university is basically engaged in a long-term lease with an entity where we own the property. Okay. The third is then what you see with Enolia. And I think the sad part is that you don't see more of the Enolias around the Morgan campus. And the reason you don't see that is because of something in history called redlining. And so, Baltimore was one of the early places in the country that practiced redlining. Meaning, this is a black neighborhood and put red lines around it. And basically then those neighborhoods were depressed so much that developers did not see any kind of financial interest in their coming in and building these facilities around the place. That's why you don't have those kind of facilities close to Morgan, but you are slowly beginning to see them now because the developers are excited about how this university is progressing, how it is growing, how it is moving. Now, with all due respect, you go to 3-4 miles to our north to a city called Towson, you see just the opposite because they've never had the history of redlining. And that's why then you see all of these off-campus facilities there in Towson because Towson is not housing close to the percent of students that we house here at Morgan. We have about 9,700 or so undergraduate students. We have housing here for 5,400 students. That's the highest percent of university housing under the university's umbrella than any university you will find in this state that's public. Now, this is very different than the small private ones. The institutions with 1,800 students where everybody kind of has to live on campus, very contiguous kind of campus. We have several of those here, Goucher or Washington College or places like that. But when you start looking at your public institutions, a business person would say that we are well beyond where public universities typically are in the percent of their undergraduate students that they provide housing for. So one other thing here. You will not find in Maryland, nor will you find in too many places in the entire United States, where a public university of Morgan's size and location is going to be housing 100% of the students. That financial model is just one that would not work. The university would much like a college we just read of this weekend go out of business.
So students report issues with parking availability and unreliable shuttle service, What steps are being taken to improve transportation on and around campus?
We're always evaluating our shuttle services, and we speak with students as often as we can about reliability and also frequency of the shuttles. Sometimes, they don't show up on time exactly, but that's because they may have to drive 10, 15 minutes, and they have to go through many traffic lights, right? And so you are not going to have a shuttle to show up exactly at 9:05, because then it may be caught at the traffic light for 3 minutes here or 2 minutes there. And so we do understand those kinds of things. Second, we are building a new garage. And so we are going to have a new garage that's going to be semi-attached to O'Connell Hall. We're having discussions right now with our residents in Morgan Park. And so we expect to expand additional parking as we have students that are living on that side of East Cold Spring. We do have parking availability on campus, but they're in places where students don't want to walk. And so at any given point during the day, we have almost a 50% availability in the north parking garage. And that's only about a 8 to 10 minute walk to the other side of the campus. We also have availability in our Y parking lot, which is behind the Murphy Fine Arts Center. But our students and our faculty and staff as well, they want parking that is adjacent to the place where their classes are being held. And quite frankly, I wish I could, but that's not something that I don't think we can promise our students, our faculty, or our staff. We don't have the land mass in order to accommodate that.
Just to conclude, one of the questions that I think a freshman asked this one, just to get a better understanding of things, they asked, what is one issue at Morgan that you believe students don't fully understand but they should?
That's a very good question too. So I think students would be better served by understanding the financial model at Morgan. Students, I think, believe that their tuition builds the buildings here. That is so far from reality. And so all of the new academic buildings you see on campus, all of those buildings were built with a lot of advocacy. I was spending a lot of time in Annapolis, getting the state to support these buildings. And so that's over $1 billion. And those buildings had no debt service. They don't have a mortgage on them. We don't have to pay a yearly fee to a bank, right? And so that's why you go on some other campuses and you don't see the kind of renewal that you're seeing here because of the efforts that we have put forth in Annapolis to make that happen. So I think students could better understand the financial model of the institution and the fact that the facilities here are being upgraded, being built anew because of what we are putting before the state as an opportunity for investment. Our operating budget here at Morgan is closing in on $600 million a year. The student tuition, I want to say, is about 90 to 100 million. So the student tuition here is really only compensating for about 20% of the total cost of operating the institution. And so I spend at least 50% of my time off campus, but that is to raise money. It's to raise money from philanthropists, it is to raise money from the federal government, and it is to raise money from the state in order for us to be able to sustain Morgan State University with an operating budget that's closing in on $600 million.
Well, thank you for this interview. I know your time is very valuable, so we truly appreciate it, and hopefully we can do this again. So thank
Well,
you
look,
so much.
I think you are a great journalist. You ask very, very good questions, and I look forward to reading about the two of you as you accept these Nobel Prizes, right? As you accept all these incredible honors that are going to come your way. And so when you are standing on the stage and you are getting these incredible prizes, as I know you will, just remember that there's your former president out there, and if you send me a ticket, I'll show up.
Thank you.